Good afternoon and welcome to another installment of our ongoing Nonprofit Leadership and Engagement Education Series. I am Joanne Nazer. I am the Manager of Nonprofit Leadership and Engagement at the Washington County Community Foundation. Thank you for joining us today to learn from our content experts about audits and 990s as development tools. Thanks to Kathy Sable from the Washington County Bar Association for supporting this webinar, since it is a law school for nonprofit session as well. First, Tanya Vokes from Dress for Success will present, and then Megan Hegedus from Domestic Violence of Southwestern PA. Thank you both for being here today, and I'm sure we'll be very interested in your presentations.
Everyone, I'm Tanya. I'm the CEO here at Dress for Success Pittsburgh. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to be a part of this group today. And I appreciate the content expert title, but what I will say is that one of the reasons I really wanted to be a part of this is because my nonprofit finance journey has not been as someone who came in as a finance person, but I have learned so much over the last 11 years. And I thought that my perspective might be helpful to other people like me who maybe aren't accountants and didn't grow up in the, wishing to be nonprofit finance executives. So want to tell you a little bit about Dress just to get started. For anybody who's not familiar with Dress for Success Pittsburgh, we are a nonprofit serving women across the region. So we serve women in Allegheny, Butler, Fayette, Greene, and Washington counties, and we provide them with the clothing and employment readiness support they need to feel strong and confident as they take that next step in their career journey, whether it is an interview, a new job, an internship, training program. And so we see just under 4,000 women a year. I would say between 3,500 and 4,000, it will be our number for 2024. And that's our projected plan for 2025 as well. It's a great number of women that we see, and we know that it is really a drop in the bucket, if it can feel like sometimes, in terms of the number of women who could use our support. And so we're always working to streamline our processes and to grow and to find ways to get folks involved with Dress for Success. And so I'll never miss the opportunity to make a plug that if you're ever interested or know someone who may be interested in supporting our organization, my team is 8 women serving 5 counties, and without our volunteer family, we certainly would not be able to reach the number of women that we do. And we have great ways to get involved as a group. So that's our Teamwork Tuesday that we do at our location in the Washington Crown Center Mall. Warehouse Wednesday we do in Sharpsburg. It's a fun way to come in and sort and organize donations for a couple of hours with your coworkers or colleagues, and really help our mobile team be ready to go out into the community. Those are a lot of fun, and we host those each month. And then you can come into one of our boutiques in Lawrenceville or in Washington and provide services directly to women who are coming through needing anything from business to business casual wear for interviews and jobs through medical scrubs, non-skid shoes. Joanne and I were talking about steel-toed boots and safety shoes that are such a big need, in particular in Washington and Greene counties. And so always great ways to get involved. That link that is there is our direct sign-up link for volunteer opportunities. So please check it out if that's something of interest to you. Wanted to spend some time talking about my nonprofit finance journey and how it's a little, maybe unconventional, as I think so often nonprofit leadership can be. I don't know that there are many of us in kindergarten when we're saying that we want to be teachers and doctors that are saying, I want to lead a nonprofit that provides social services support one day. That wasn't me. And so my whole background in my career was in the corporate HR space. And but to that end, I think that my shift over to Dress for Success, I can tell you a little bit about how that happened. I was working for one of the major healthcare providers in the region, and my role was employee engagement through volunteerism. And so I was connecting with nonprofits, really looking for ways to go out to allow our employees to go out and be a part of all of the good work that nonprofits are doing across the region. And so I started to get connected to different nonprofits that we would take groups out to each month. And it's hard to not want to do everything, right? Like everybody's doing such good things, and you really want to roll up your sleeves and get involved. The food bank was one I really thought was great to be involved with. I had small kids at the time. You're able to take them to some of the different volunteer engagements. And Dress for Success was another one because the mission of Dress for Success is really personal to me. I'm a first generation college student. My mom was very supportive all through high school, college, and grad school, but she hadn't worked in a professional setting. And so when I had the first call for my first professional interview, it was with Pepsi Bottling Group. And she couldn't necessarily advise me on what was appropriate to wear or how to prepare for my interview. And so I really could have used a program like Dress for Success. And so I started volunteering at that time. And then, things shift and change, and all of a sudden opportunities will present themselves. And pretty soon I was coming to work for Dress for Success as their director of operations. And that was 11 years ago, which is really hard to imagine because time really has gone quickly. I've earned every gray hair on my head, but it has been a lot of fun along the way. And about 6 years ago, I had the opportunity to throw my hat in the ring for the leadership role. And I do really feel like I hit the job lottery in a lot of ways. I love my work in HR, but it's hard to find something where you're helping other women and their families better their circumstances every day. And so I feel really lucky to be a part of it. I have a really hardworking team. But the shift from corporate work to nonprofit wasn't like an easy transition in a lot of ways because it's just a completely different world in many ways. And I think, like many nonprofit leaders, I felt like I needed to then be the expert on everything. I needed to be the HR expert, which I had a little of that. I could do. But I felt like I needed to be the marketing expert and the communications person, and I needed to be the finance expert. And what I came to learn is that that is not only impossible and the quickest way to make yourself completely insane, but also it's really probably not the best route to go. And really surrounding yourself with folks who are experts in those spaces proves to be a lot more manageable and effective. And so, when I think about our finance team at Dress, finance was the area where I felt like I I still really viewed it, especially the independent review, the audit, the 990. I was coming from a place of compliance in HR. And so I viewed those aspects as things we had to do. We had to get them done from a compliance perspective. And that was really where I was coming from, was that requirement space. And then our finance team provided, the support to get us there. And our finance team, you'll see listed there. Not, I mean, I'm pleased to be a part of it, but I am supported by our board treasurer, also our board president many times, our finance committee, which is made up of myself, board members, the treasurer, our accountant attends those meetings, and then also our auditing firm. And so it takes a lot of folks to make the financial wheels run at Dress, and I'm sure that that's true at your organizations as well. But certainly wanted to share that coming in, I wasn't looking at the audit and other financial documentation in the 990. I wasn't looking at that as a development tool, a development tool for us until we needed to make a big purchase, and I needed to write my first grant, which I had also no expertise in doing. But it turns out when you really need something and it's really going to make a difference, you can write a story about it and really describe your need. And my first grant that I wrote was actually to WCCF, and it was to help us purchase our first mobile boutique, which these are incredibly important to our organization. They really changed the game for us, allowing us to kind of double the number of women we see each year, particularly in areas of, rural Washington and Greene, Butler counties. We're up to 3 vans now, but that grant was for our very first one, and that was in 2019. And that was where I learned that the independent financial review that we were doing at the time and our 990 could really be used to help us tell the organization's story and from a financial perspective, which was new and a new way of looking at it for me, and certainly made a difference, I think, in securing that funding. We've continued to use those tools to our advantage in that way. and not just, I mean, of course, there's still compliance and that's important, but I think that thinking about it from a development tool perspective was something new and really important for us. The program narrative that is a part of the independent financial review and the more full audit, those really give us an opportunity to provide some consistent messaging between what we share in those documents should match what we share on social media, what our website says, to allow for some consistency around talking about the work and the mission and the people who help to bring our mission to life. And then the 990, I think, we have several versions, several years posted on GuideStar, where any donor, a foundation, a corporate partner, our individual donors can go and look at our 990s, not just for the most recent year, but for years prior. And I think that can be powerful in telling the organization's financial story. For dress, you would find that we have really, when I came into the leadership role, one of the first goals that we set was to diversify our funding streams. At that time, we were about 80% reliant on one state-funded grant through the Department of Human Services. And that really kept me up at night because I'll sleep best when we're like no more than 33% reliant on any one source, right? But 80% would have really made an impact if for some reason that funding had gone away. I don't know that we would have been able to keep the doors open. And so we really started to work to build our processes and procedures around asking for foundation support and tracking the way that we do that, around corporate sponsorship and outreach to our partners to find ways to engage them through donation drives and volunteer opportunities. In addition to that, sponsor our big event way that corporate partners sometimes first get involved. And then also for our individual donors, we started our MGC networking group at that time, and that allowed us to not only give folks who care deeply about the mission an opportunity to support each month, but also gave us a way to have some unrestricted funding that comes in each month. And while it's not a huge number, makes a big difference, especially during things like when we went through the pandemic, just like you, we had unexpected costs that we, certainly hadn't written a grant for, things like extra postage to send people their scrubs at home. And that funding became really important to us. So we were able to move the needle. It takes a long time to diversify funding streams. When you're not a patient person, this isn't the best. But over the 6 years' time, we were able to go from 80% reliance, just about 80% reliance, to 48%. So we're ticking closer to that 33% where I would feel most comfortable. But these tools have really been beneficial to us when we're forging new relationships and even just maintaining the ones that we have, to be able to direct folks to somewhere where they can take a look at our financials in an easy way that shows them kind of the growth and change of the organization over the last few years and our current state. So really encourage the GuideStar process can be they really walk you through it. You have to put some time in to reach those like platinum and gold levels, but I do think it's worth it to take the time to do that, because we like to be able to share that information in an easy place where people can find it by contacting us and we can direct them out there. Or some folks who are of a donor mindset are already looking at those things, right? Like they're already going out and looking. I'm recruiting for a position right now, and one of my recommendations to candidates was like, take a look at those things, because when you're thinking about salaries and benefits, one of the places you can use the 990 as a recruitment tool as well. So can't say enough good things about having learned about that and ways to use it to dress as benefit. One thing I wanted to talk about that's been an interesting learning curve, I'll say, and certainly I'm sure not unique to dress, but because of our size, Dress for Success, whenever I took over the leadership role, we were at under $1 million operating budget. And so that meant for us, from a financial perspective, that we weren't required to have a formal full audit. We had the option to do an independent financial review, which is still done through an auditing firm, but it's completely voluntary and optional, and it is it's like an audit light, right? So it's the financial information that you need without the kind of deep dive into the requirements of an audit. And so that was what I came in and learned first. And as the organization grew and we secured some additional funding for things like our Employ Her Pittsburgh initiative, we crossed that threshold to being $1 million at $1 million operating budget, just a little bit over. And what the interesting thing for us is that we found this out during the process of our independent financial review. So as the auditors were or the reviewers from the auditing firm were going through, they realized that that particular fiscal year we were going to be bumped over. And so our process was a little convoluted because we had to shift to the full audit kind of midstream. And one of the lessons we learned from that is that that whole finance team that works together so closely, sometimes it's worth it to use some capacity building dollars to bring on a consultant to help you with projections and things that maybe, so we were able to put some tools in place that would help us project finances over each year, and that has been really beneficial to us. So that was kind of like a lesson learned that I hope you'll all take away from. If you're not doing projections, make sure that you give some thought to that, and even if it means bringing someone on for support. But once we made the shift to the full audit, we also learned that it's the auditing firm is taking on a significantly higher level of risk. And so their level of work and investigation is higher, and also it's more expensive. So budgeting for that audit certainly is important for organizations like mine who were small enough to not need one, and kind of making that shift over. So that was one of the things I wanted to be able to share today with this group, because if you are also in that kind of unique space of being small but growing, that's something to consider as you continue to grow. And those what I mostly wanted to make sure to share. I'm happy to answer questions and certainly encourage you to reach out to me anytime. My email address is listed there. I'm everywhere. So I feel so lucky to be a part of this work with all of you. And I'm no expert, but I'm always happy to talk through things. And so if I can ever be of service, I hope you'll reach out.
Thanks so much, Tanya. I think that was very helpful and a great basis. And now it's time for Megan.
So I'm going to talk about how you're actually going to be able to use the information about your organization in your Form 990, and touch a little bit on audits as development tools. So I do want you to know, my name is Megan Hagedis. I'm the CEO of Domestic Violence Services of Southwestern Pennsylvania. I've worked with the agency for nearly 25 years, but I've been in this position for less than one. So this is by no means an area that I have a wide knowledge base in, but I can say I've learned quite a bit about it in my time in this position. So I'm going to share some of the things that I've learned with you today. So first of all, things that the Form 990 and your audit have in common, or both of those things are available to the public, and some of the more common ways that they are accessed are through Candid and ProPublica. Both of them reflect the manner in which donor and grant funds are utilized. So they are going to show how funds were spent. Were they spent in accordance with applicable laws and funder and donor specifications? Both of them are going to show you opportunities for storytelling and community impact, and that's really what our focus for this presentation is going to be. Both of these things are required by many funders for grant applications, because your funders want to know that their funds are going to be managed appropriately. And savvy donors are going to be looking at these things too, because they also want to know that their funds are going to be managed appropriately. So I'm going to start a little bit on the audit, but I will tell you the bulk of this presentation is going to focus on the 990. So just a little bit more about the audit. As Tanya was mentioning, it's really a comprehensive examination of your organization's financial statements, and it's conducted by an independent auditor. And the purpose is to ensure that your financial records are accurate. It's making sure that there's a true financial picture of your organization, and it gives a detailed review of your income, your expenses, your assets, liabilities, internal controls, and things like that. So it all tells a story about the financial integrity of your organization. What an audit might show to donors who are looking at your audit and funders who are looking at your audit are, again, your financial strengths and weaknesses. Because all of your financial records are examined in depth, a clean audit is really going to enhance your credibility with stakeholders. It's going to show them compliance and risk management. So again, are you meeting requirements? Are there penalties, fines, reputational damage, things like that? So obviously, if you're in a high risk position, that's not something that funders and donors want to see. They're looking for good or clean audits. An organization or an audit can help your organization by building and strengthening your relationship with donors. Again, because they are looking at your audit, a clean report is going to be a factor in their decision-making process as they determine whether to give you funds. It's also going to help improve your internal controls. So if you have findings in your audit or your auditor has made recommendations, you want to make sure that you're looking at those things and implementing them, because again, a cleaner audit is going to speak to your financial stability. So those are just some little pieces about the audit, but I really want to dive into the 990. So the 990 is the tax form that's used by most nonprofit organizations. Its purpose is to ensure transparency and accountability to your stakeholders, and it includes a wealth of information. So we're going to talk about some things to consider when your 990 is being prepared that will be impactful to those reading it and will help you tell the story of your organization that will hopefully make you more attractive to donors. So just really briefly, these in the core form of 990, there are 12 parts numeric, and then there are also a whole slew of supplemental schedules. Everything in this list in green is what I'm going to touch on. And in terms of supplemental schedules, we are going to talk a good bit about Schedule O. So if you have your own 990, you're welcome to use that to follow along. I am using my organization's most recent 990s for a visual for you, because again, they are available to the public. So you can use this to follow along. So on page 1, part 1, before you ever even get to part 1, you'll see at the top that the 990 really outlines some basic information about your organization that would be important for someone who's looking to donate to know. In addition to the name and where it's located, it's going to show your EIN number, it's going to show your tax exempt status, your website, and the form of your organization. So DVSSP is a corporation. And it'll show your year of formation. So it really paints a picture of your longevity, and it gives you contact information and resources for learning more about your organization, just in that little section. Moving down to part 1, number 1, the first thing it asks you to do is to briefly describe the organization's mission or most significant activities. You will see that we did neither of those in this section. We're referring readers to see Schedule O. The mission can be entered on the next page, and the activities again are in Schedule O, and I'm going to get back to that in just a second. We'll go through the rest of the form first. Numbers 3 and 4 are related to the number of voting members on your board. Number 5 will reflect the number of individuals that were employed in your organization in the last year. And number 6 reflects the total number of volunteers. So if you're utilizing volunteers as a nonprofit, you definitely want to make sure that that information is there, because stakeholders are looking to see that tax-exempt nonprofit organizations are helping themselves, and the utilization of volunteers is a good indicator of that. And then on lines 8 through 19, you will see a snapshot of the revenue and expenses for the current year compared to the prior year. So that gives folks looking at this, again, an idea if anything major has changed from one year to the next. And if it has, Schedule O can be utilized to describe what those differences are and why they exist. So that's the second time that Schedule O has been referenced just on this first page. So let's talk just briefly about what Schedule O is and why it's important. So it's an attachment, an addendum to the 990 that you can use to provide additional information and explanations about things that you have in Form 990. It allows you to be descriptive and thorough for your funders and donors. And it's a flexible space. It's nearly limitless that you can use to really give a complete picture of your organization, including not only those explanations and descriptions of changes, but your operations, important policies, and indicators of compliance. So again, number one, we have our most significant activities at DVSSP explained on Schedule O. So let's take a look at that. This is the top of our Schedule O. You'll see the significant activities are the services that DVSSP provides. So we opted to put them here, number one, because this wouldn't all fit in the space provided on the first page. But also we wanted to add the fact that we do provide services in 3 counties. DVSSP operates in Washington, Greene, and Fayette counties, and we wanted readers to know that. The other thing to note is, again, these are our most significant services. So someone who's going to our website and wants to learn more is going to find that the services listed on our website match those that are described on the 990, and people who are looking here can get a lot more in-depth information if they have questions about what any of these services look like. Okay, so let's leave Schedule O for now, and we'll go back to the main 990. This is the second page. You'll see at the very top, there's a place where you can check this box if Schedule O is used again for anything on this page. And for us, we did. And so that box is checked. The first thing it asks on here after that is the mission. So as I said earlier, DVSSP has our mission statement here on the 990. And again, someone going to our website will find that the mission on our website matches the mission on our 990. So that's something that you want to make sure is consistent. We did recently change our mission, so we made sure that it was updated in all the places that stakeholders and the general public might see. Numbers 2 and 3 are spaces where you can indicate significant or unreported changes in programming. DVSSP didn't have any of that, so those are both checked no. And then number 4 wants you to talk about service accomplishments for your 3 largest program services, largest meaning by expenses. So for DVSSP, our first one there is just over $1 million. That's actually for our emergency shelter and helpline services. There's a lot of information that we wanted to share that was not going to fit into this space. So we have that in Schedule O, along with our second most expensive program also. Those accomplishments are detailed in Schedule O. But you can see here our third most expensive program, at just over $400,000, was our key housing program. We provide rapid rehousing services in Washington, Greene, and Fayette counties. And we included that information here in the description because, again, it's important to me that our stakeholders know that this service is not only provided, but it's provided throughout our service area. And in addition to the accomplishments, which would reflect the number of adults and children who were housed and the number of apartments that were utilized, we also took a little bit of liberties here to explain what rapid rehousing is, because if you're not in our industry and you're not a federal funder, there's a good chance you may not know what that looks like or what purpose it serves. So it helps to explain why we spent as much as we did on housing and what the program looks like. And again, people who want to know more can always look on our website, and they have our contact information on the 990 if they wanted to call and ask questions. So let's go to Schedule O, and we'll look at these first two programs and talk about some of the information that we've included in those accomplishments that are important for a reader to know. So again, our most expensive program is our emergency shelter program. And I've highlighted some information here on our Schedule O that we included that's beyond just what happened, like what numbers were for Safe House Services. So first of all, it's important to note that we run two emergency shelters, one in Washington County and one in Fayette County. So again, when someone's looking at the amount of money that we've spent on that program, that helps to explain why it's so high. We also wanted to make sure we were clear about the population being served. We are only funded to provide services to domestic violence victims and their children, and that is who we provided shelter and hotline services to. And then we took some time to talk about the services that are provided within the shelter program, because again, people who don't know anything about what we're doing may think that we just offer a place for people to sleep, and that's not the case. There are a lot of programs that are offered within the safe houses, and we want people reading this to know that. And we have our accomplishments here, our number served, the impact that it had. We talk about the number of shelter nights that were provided in each county. And then again, our hotline is part of this program because it operates 24/7, and the bulk of our calls are run through our safe houses. So there's information about our hotline callers as well, the number that we've received. And then at the very end, overall total of the amount of counseling hours that were provided and the total number of people who were served. So a lot more information, a lot more comprehensive than anything we could have fit in the little space provided on the 990. Then our second most expensive program was our prevention and outreach department. So in this space on Schedule O, we took a little bit of time to explain what that department does. This department at DVSSP does not provide any direct services to victims. Their focus is on preventing domestic violence. That's something that I always want to make sure the funders and donors and the general public know about us, that we're not just serving people after the fact, but that we really are doing important work to stop domestic violence from happening in the first place. That department is also responsible for community awareness of the impact of domestic violence, as well as the services that DVSSP provides. So we do a lot of trainings, we do school programs. This department also offers some volunteer opportunities. This is the department that oversees our volunteer program. The other thing that I want to note is the number of statistics that we've included in here, because again, we do a lot of presentations, a lot of school programs. They're impactful, and it's important that people know that. We've broken that information out by county. Because we've learned operating in 3 counties, people want to know what we're doing where they live. So if someone in Greene County were to take a look at this, they could easily see exactly what services this department is providing within their county. So those are our 3 most expensive programs. And I just want to talk a minute about staying true to your mission. So when you're seeking funding, Again, you'll remember our two number 1 and 3 programs were our Safe Houses and our Key Rapid Rehousing program. Both of those programs serve to empower survivors. Our second biggest was prevention and outreach. Prevention is creating safer communities, and the outreach side of that department is raising awareness. So again, if someone is looking at DVSSP's mission, our mission is to end domestic violence by empowering survivors, raising awareness, and creating safer communities. So the 3 programs that we are spending the bulk of our funding on relate directly to our mission. So moving on in the 990 to Part 6, this is governance, management, and disclosure. So this one in Section A, number 2 is asking about relationships between officers, directors, and key employees. So I can tell you for DVSSP, we do have 2 instances of this. We have 2 board members who each have a relative on staff. So we have used Schedule O to explain who the board members are, who on staff they're related to, and what that relationship is. Number 8 in this section asks about meeting documentation, specifically by the board and board committees. So you want to make sure that you have minutes from your board meetings. Most of the federal grants that I write, they're looking for the last 3 months of minutes from board meetings. We do have board committees at our agency, and we do have minutes for those committee meetings. In this same part in Section B, that covers, we're looking specifically at 11A through 15B. The first thing it wants to know is, has your board seen your 990? And it wants you to describe what that process looks like, again, on Schedule O. It asks if you have a written conflict of interest policy and how that is enforced. Again, they want that described on Schedule O. It asks about whistleblower policy and document retention and destruction policy. I don't know that those are necessarily required by the IRS, but they are important policies to have. Again, they speak to proper management and governance of the organization. And number 15 is about asking for the process used to determine compensation of the CEO and any other officers or key employees. And again, they want that described on Schedule O. So someone who is looking at DVSSP's 990 will see in Schedule O that we've detailed the process by which our board reviews our 990, how we enforce our conflict of interest policy, and how my compensation as CEO is determined. And then moving on to Part 7. Part 7 in the 990 is one of the most read sections of the 990. One of the things that it does is lists the compensation for the highest paid officer in the organization. It also provides a list of all of the board members and indicates which of those are officers. The other thing that it does is allows you to indicate how many volunteer hours your board members have given in the year. And I can tell you this year, DVSSP does not have that for a few different reasons. Number 1, I was too new and not knowledgeable enough about this to know that it really would have been good to have this in there. The other piece was we didn't have the best system for documenting our board members' volunteer time. So that's something that I've worked on in this year, and we do have a much more streamlined system that gives us some pretty accurate hours from our board members. And so next year, I will have this information on our 990 because we have a working board. They're very involved in the work that we do. And I want our stakeholders to know that our board members are that committed to our agency and to our mission. And then the last piece that I want to talk about is in Part 8, and that's your statement of revenue. Again, there's a spot at the top. You can check the box if you want to indicate that more information or more descriptive information is contained on Schedule O. In this case, for DVSSP, it is not. But the top of this form, really just in a quick little snapshot, shows you the total revenue that's come in. So for us, it's been close to 2.5 million, and where that came from. So you can see what DVSSP brought in from fundraising events. Our government grants, of course, are what bring in the bulk of our funding, and that's just over $2 million. And then line F is for other contributions and grants that aren't part of government grants. And then our non-cash contributions, so things like clothing and household items. This year we were donated a used car. Our policy is that when we receive those donations, we ask the donor to assess a value to them, and that's how we get this number. And that is everything that I have in the 990. So I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Well, thanks so much, Megan. That was great. If anybody wants to raise their hand or has a question they want to write in the chat, that would be very helpful. So Megan, I just want to say that I appreciate your accuracy in talking about the level of detail you can get into in this, and that you can share very practical information about the organization and keeping it such a useful tool then to show donors, foundation funding sources. So this is just a plug for the foundation. I'll put this in. You said you weren't going to talk about part 9, which is the statement of functional expenses. But on May 20th, next year, we will have a session provided by Michael Anderson, he's the chair of the trustees this year, and he'll further explain that. So in our ongoing nonprofit leadership and engagement series, we plan to continue with this topic. But and I'm glad that you talked about the specifics of it and the descriptors and the accomplishments. Tanya, I was going to ask you if in your 990s, or do you talk about some of your success stories, or Megan, you could answer it as well. Can you share any information, do you think, in this it's a government document, it's an IRS document, but the audit, do you include any of that?
So for us, we probably could do a better job of including some success stories, some more detail. I mean, we talk about generally the growth of the organization and the number of women that we provide support to and in what way, but I don't know that we do as much as maybe we could. So I think Megan's presentation was really helpful to think through. I know when you're in the 990 headspace and you're working on it, you're trying to get through the sections, right? But I think really taking the time to add that level of detail can be helpful. So I think that's something we'll take into consideration for sure.
Next year.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And I think Megan brought up a great point too about the minutes, and that, in your board meeting, you should be having minutes, and that should maybe necessarily be available to the public as well, and to your donors if they so request. Tanya, I know that you have been very fortunate with your funding and gotten some RK Mellon funding. And how did they use your audit? Or I'm sure they required it, and your 990. Can you share any details about that?
They did request those from us. So for us at that time, so it was actually the RK Mellon grant was the one that kind of pushed us into that new operating budget threshold. And so for them, we had provided the 990, of course, and then the independently reviewed statements that we were doing at that time. So I think they did come back and ask for some additional detail, just about sections that probably would have been apparent in a full audit, but were not for us in that review. I do think that doing a review is beneficial if it's, even though it is optional. I think it really has helped us secure a number of grants because it allows us to show that we have processes and procedures in place to be good financial stewards. But yeah, I think that was the one that caused that shift. So it was kind of a transition period for us.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing. And as you know, that the foundation very strongly promotes the Pennsylvania Bureau of Charitable Organizations and through the Department of State and their requirements. So Tanya is talking about the level of review and audit. There's also a level of compilation, which is over 100,000. But at any level, you can have any of those review with an outside accounting firm, auditing firm, and that it's just another level of transparency that we encourage all nonprofits to show to their donors and funding supporters.
Right. Something that I learned through this process, and we actually just went through it, was that a best practice is to change your firm every 5 to 10 years, your auditing firm. And so whenever, I came into this role, we had been using the same firm for 5 or 6 years, and we continued to do that through that first audit year. And then it was time, the finance committee recommended it was time to take a look at making a shift, not because there was anything wrong with that firm. And I really liked working with them because they knew us, right? Like they were familiar, but that can be the problem, is that they're familiar, and that fresh set of eyes can pick up things that you otherwise don't, can miss because you're kind of going through the motions in some ways. And so we just made a shift to a new firm for this year. And so we've had the opportunity to vet a few of them, and there are great firms out there doing good work. So again, if that's information that would be helpful to anybody, I'm happy to share it if you want to shoot me an email.
I think you made a great point, Tom, that you're right. Familiarity may not have the freshest perspective that you may want.
Yeah.
Megan, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
We've actually used the same auditor for some time. We have a lot of federal grants. We have a lot of complicated grants, and the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence, who is our primary funder and who establishes our program standards. They require a lot of really different and unique information. And so much along the lines of what Tanya just described, our auditors become familiar with what those requirements are, and is therefore able to provide that stuff for us without a lot of extra education from us. So for our organization, we see that a little bit differently just based on the requirements that we have.
That's true. It may be personal to the nonprofit because of various standards.
Right.
And I know that the federal government has very strict guidelines for use of funds.
And there's other ways to get a fresh set of eyes perspective too. So we had 6 new board members join us over the last year, and 2 of them joined the finance committee. And we just had a meeting last week, and it was so interesting to hear their questions, because they're things that we just know or we just take for granted. And so to have them at that fresh set of eyes can be really valuable, but I think you can get it in other ways too. So the finance committee can be valuable for that, for sure.
I could not agree more with that. Same thing, we have a lot of brand new or newer board members, and we have also been trying to, on our board committees, involve community members. So they're not board members yet, but they're kind of learning a little bit about the organization or lending their expertise at the committee level. And so exactly what you said, Tanya, they ask a lot of questions and make you really think about things, and offer a lot of good suggestions and expertise. So we're always happy to have people with those different knowledge bases joining us.
Well, congratulations to you both. And that's another topic that we're considering is just board development. How do you recruit board members? And it can be challenging to keep good board members, yet keep your board fresh. I mean, it's quite a balance of, you know, term limits and stepping off for a little while, maybe coming back, and then finding, recruiting new people. So I think that's great for both of you and getting that new perspective.
That was one of the things that was really stood out whenever I came into this role was our board was not very diverse in many ways. So people were, you know, same race, same age, same economic stature. And it's an important perspective, but certainly not the only perspective, and definitely not representative of the women that we work with every day. And so we started really looking at how do you cast the net wider. It can't just be where you're asking somebody who you might think would be a good fit to be a part of the board or to interview, because we tend to be around people like us. And so we started putting an ad on nonprofit talent. You can run an ad pretty inexpensively, and we've generated a lot of interest and been able to secure a pretty good group. Our board's 18 folks, it's pretty big, and they're pretty engaged. So yeah, I think that's something to consider for sure. That's definitely a good topic.
Well, that's a great suggestion too, nonprofit talent, and, you know, just trying to recruit diverse board members is an ongoing challenge in itself.
Sure.
Megan, how did you recruit the new board members?
Some of it, we got some recommendations from our staff from their dealings with people within our Tri-County area. Some of them are people that we already knew had held some level of expertise that we really needed. And others we've happened upon. And again, like Tanya said, we try to keep it diverse in a lot of different ways. And so we do have a board matrix that we follow. So we want to make sure that we're filling needs and not just putting people in seats. So right now on our board, we have 13 members.
Good odd number.
It is.
Just saying. And Tonya, I'm glad that you said too that some are new to the finance committee. And does your board get involved with the 990s or making any suggestions, or audit committee?
So the way that we do it is that our finance committee, the treasurer is involved in the audit process and the preparing of the 990. And then although the board doesn't have to vote on the 990 and the audit, they do have fiscal responsibility to the organization. And so we put time in our board meeting each year in February for the audit firm to come and review both documents with the board at kind of a high level so that they understand if they should be asked questions about it, you know, in the community or when they're soliciting support, that they're comfortable talking about it. You know, we're always available, but everybody who's involved at that level should be able to talk about the work to some degree. So we do make sure we get it in front of them. And I think one of the requirements is that your board has reviewed the information. So we try to make sure we're compliant from that standpoint as well.
Great point. Great point. Megan?
Yes, same here. Our board reviews ours in November, so they just did that. But prior to that, our finance and audit committee sees it. But at both occasions, our auditor is there going through the documents and explaining everything, both to the committee and to the full board, and giving them an opportunity to ask questions or get clarification. But as Tanya said, it really prepares them to be able to speak a little bit more in detail about the organization and where things stand.
Very important. It's part of their duties. So
Sure. Yeah, we take a look at it with our team too. We do a team meeting in March, so the board really gets to get their eyes on everything in February before we finalize things, and then my team is together quarterly, and so at our March meeting, we take a look at it again at a high level, just so that they know where to find it, and that they are comfortable. They should know that information as well. They're not operating at the same level of fiscal responsibility, but they get asked questions about our work every day. So being able to direct someone there easily is important.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Is there any other questions or anything else we would like to cover? I appreciate Megan and Tanya's openness for this topic, and that you can find them in through their organizations. It has been a very important issue, and I thank you. I think you've made some very practical yet significant points about how a nonprofit can present more reflective information, and to use this government document that you have to complete to your advantage, and that can show your organization in its best light and show off the programs that it's doing. So I want to let you know the next session in our nonprofit leadership and engagement education series will be Tuesday, January 7th at noon, entitled, of all things, Board Development, with Wendy Bertner from Nonprofit Sidekick. Thanks to all those who participated in today's session, and special thanks again to Megan and Tanya, and to our outstanding presenters today. I hope you have a wonderful day and happy holidays.